Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on this historic and exciting day. We will have comments from the two gentlemen sitting next to me, but before we do that, I want to remind folks that we have microphones on either side of the room, so raise your hand and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. When you ask the question, please identify yourself with your name and affiliation prior to answering the question so we can have Coach Fickell start to get to know this audience. So with that, I'll turn it over to Athletic Director Chris McIntosh.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Just briefly, thank you all for being here today. It's a momentous day for our program. Couldn't be more excited to introduce the 31st head football coach at the University of Wisconsin. Excited for our fan base, excited for our university, but most excited for the players in our program, present and in the future. The future is bright. Thanks for being here. Yeah.
I think we should go one more beat. Dave, do you need one still yet? Yeah. Go one more beat. Thank you. Okay. Hey, I can take that. Coach, if you would you please start us off with just some opening comments, and then we'll take questions.
Well, neither one of us wore that jersey, as you can tell. No, I'm so excited to be here. I'm grateful that my family could be here with me as well. They won't get the luxury of sticking around here for quite as while. And, they got to get back home, finish up school a little bit before we get the whole crew here. So that gives me a great opportunity to spend an enormous amount of time diving into this entire program, to every young man on the team, as far as, obviously the guys are here now, as well as the recruiting moving forward. And this is obviously a whirlwind. I know that for everybody in here, when you end a season and things turn around this fast and this quick, but it's the world that we live in. It's things that we have to do to be able to maintain our program, our kids, to give them clarity and to move forward. And that's my greatest objective right now. I spent 4 or 5 hours today visiting with as many kids on the team as I could, and that's what I'll continue to do. So got a lot of work to do with doing that, and excited about it.
With that, we'll start with questions. Again, please raise your hand and identify yourself with name and affiliation. We'll start with Jeff.
Jeff Patricus from Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Luke, you mentioned it upstairs, but you're not going to make any outlandish predictions, but you played and coached at a place where expectations are very high. You got Cincinnati to the college football playoff. What's your vision for this program now that you're here, and do you have any idea what work needs to be done on the ground to get it to where you want it to be?
No, I don't know. I mean, I know there's always work to be done, and I think that's what excites you about a coach. I mean, you could be at any program, and you're not where you want to be. I mean, there's one program at the end of the year where they want to be, right? And then they got a lot of work to do to be able to repeat to what they're doing. So it's the uniqueness of what it is that we choose to do. So for me, I'll be honest with you. I'll tell you this, and you'll probably hear it for every year at the beginning of the year. We got one objective and one goal, and it's to play for a championship. And I said that when I started at Cincinnati, and that is open-ended, but it gives you a lot of flexibility of things you do. You have an opportunity in this league. If you're playing for a championship, amazing things can happen. And I think you just got to stay focused and know that that's what it's come down to.
Hey, Coach. Mike Jocks, NBC 15 Sports in Madison. Welcome to Madison.
Thank you.
What was that? I don't know if the final straw is the right word, but what was the final thing that brought you here to Madison that said, let's bring the family and move to Madison?
You know what? Is there one straw? I don't know that there is. I think that, to be honest with you, from afar, I've always, had a great fondness for the program, the culture, and things like that. Timing has a lot to do with it. I think the changing world of what college is, and to me, what Wisconsin is willing to continue to do, and we've all got to understand and recognize, what changes for these young men, and are you willing to take those steps to give them the opportunity to play for championships? And maybe the final straw is a relationship, and I think the relationship that I'm going to have with Mac at finding ways to develop and move this program forward. He knows what it's about. He knows what it's been. I think that's a unique situation for me. I've never had that. And I'm excited for that. Whether that's the final straw, that's one of them. I know, and it's a big deal to me.
Or Jim, and then Colton.
Hi, Luke. Jim Polzine from the Wisconsin State Journal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said upstairs that your wife and you had talked, and there were intriguing spots, right, if they ever became open. I know you're not going to name those spots, but how big was that list, seriously? And then,
Not very big.
okay.
Not very big. Just we have certain things that we want for our family, and we all get blinded by our profession and our job, and when things come up and you don't have a plan, they get distracting. And so the good fortunes that we've had in the last few years to have some success on the field has made us in the off season kind of get together and sit down and say, okay, now let's before the things ever get hot, let's kind of have a plan in place, and that way you're not grasping at straws every time you have a win and somebody's interested in you. So for us, it had a lot to do with areas we felt like our family could thrive, could live, could stay for a long time and go to school and really enjoy all the things about the community, because I can live in a shoebox, I can stay here in the facility 18, 19 hours a day and be around 18 to 22-year-olds. I know I'm not sure that's the healthiest thing in the world, but that's not the same for them, and that's a big part of my life and what's going to help me be who I need to be.
Colton Bartholomew, Wisconsin State Journal. Luke, you've mentioned a couple of times the meetings you've had with the players, and a lot of players on this team have been outspoken that they wanted Jim Leonhard to be the coach here. What have those conversations been like, and how do you kind of approach trying to win over the locker room coming in as the outsider?
You just got to be yourself. You got to be authentic. You got to be real, and it takes time. The unique thing that I think I got is I was in the position, and I had a great relationship with probably a lot of guys, just like Jim has. And I think that what we do understand is while kids are emotional, young men are emotional, they also are resilient. And I got the utmost respect for however things continue to move forward, that whatever is best for them, that they'll do. And I know that building a relationship is a big deal. It's not trying to overtake somebody else's relationship, which I'm not trying to do. But even that relationship with Jim or whoever it is that's been here, those are all things that make it difficult. I got a son back in Cincinnati that is in a similar situation that says, well, I don't have a relationship with some of these people who are coming in. That's what life is. Life is about continuing to grow, and so that's the message I've had to these guys. I'm not trying to overtake somebody's relationship with them, but I'm here to grow a relationship with them as well.
Jesse, then Steve, and then Zach.
Jesse Temple with The Athletic. This is for Chris. Along those lines, how strongly did you consider Jim throughout this process, and how much consideration did you give to the fact that the players were so supportive of him throughout this process?
Well, obviously Jimmy, first and foremost, did an incredible job for the program. Stepped into a circumstance that was incredibly difficult and over-delivered. And there's been a lot spoken about wins and losses, and I just want to be clear, that's not at all what it was about. Jim's ability to step into the program after an incredibly difficult transition and inspire this team to play with passion and with heart the way they did throughout the season was incredible, and we owe him for that. Just because of the process and the timing, had the ability to watch Jimmy on a day-to-day basis, and obviously had a great base of knowledge on who he was and what he stood for. He's part of the DNA of this program. And so gave him strong consideration, very strong consideration. But as the process went along and as we got more comfortable with what opportunities may exist in terms of leadership for the program, and as Luke and I spent more time together and got to understand each other more, got to build the beginning of a relationship, and it became clear that we see the world in a very similar way, and we see the potential in a program like ours in a very similar way, and we have the same expectations, championship level expectations. And it became evident that Luke, in his experience and his belief system and his approach and his process, which was proven and does align with what we believe here, was the way that I felt we should go, and was the way that I felt best positioned our program for long-term success.
Steve.
Steve McGargy, Associated Press. Just wondering for Luke, with recruiting calendar being what it is, what's your timetable in terms of assembling a staff? And also, have you even broached the possibility with Jim about whether he might be interested in being part of your staff, or if that's something you're even considering?
Yes, definitely I am. I met with Jim for about an hour last night. We'll meet again Wednesday. We had a great conversation. Very open to, obviously picking his brain for a lot of things. He loves this place. He's a diehard. So there's a lot of options that are open. I respect Jim. I don't know Jim now that well. I'm getting to know him. I know him from afar. We know people that know each other. I think we're very similar in a lot of ways. Jim will know what's best for him. Jim will know what's best for the program. Jim will know what's best for this team, and I respect that. And we'll continue to talk about what the future looks like, but we don't know what that is right now. This is a really hard situation with a lot of coaches. Jim obviously being the one that everybody knows about and talks about, but you walk in that room and there's a lot of guys that that their lives are going to be turned upside down, and not everybody's going to be here. And I got the same thing back at Cincinnati. I'll go home tonight and have to go in there tomorrow and look at a lot of guys in the face and not be able to tell them what their future looks like because I don't know. And unfortunately, it's the profession the life that we chose. That's no disrespect to anybody, but I have an obligation to do what's best for this program and this team. And I'm not saying I know exactly what that is as we go, but I know that it's getting the right group of people that are going to be aligned in the right way and focused on doing the things that we need to do. And there'll be a few guys that come back with me right away, but we're going to work this process and find out what's best for this place because there's a lot of deep roots here, and the culture is incredibly strong here from what I know in the last 25 years. Before that, I was paying a lot more attention to wrestling programs and as a younger kid, things like that. So I don't know what programs were like back then. I don't even know if they used the word culture back then. But I don't want to jump, knee-jerk react to a lot of things. There's a process to this that has already begun.
Mark?
Coach, Mark Stewart from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Another recruiting question for you. As you put together your staff, your recruiting staff, what's going to be an ideal size for that? How key is getting that ideal size going to be to what you want to do? And then I guess the other part is there are about 9-10 guys out there who have been committed to Wisconsin Badger football for the last few months. Will those scholarships still be honored?
Those guys are our number one priority. It's a short time, and those guys are the ones that's lives are in a little bit of disarray as well. The great thing about the University of Wisconsin is those guys might have been attracted here because of maybe a relationship with a guy, but they're going to be here because of what Wisconsin is, because of the school, because of the athletic program, because of the history. And that's what's really fortunate about walking in here in a tough situation in 3 weeks that you got to sign, a group of guys. So we're excited about getting on the road to go out and see those guys and build a relationship. We hope that we can, sustain every single one of those guys, and we're going to continue to push forward. When I come back here tomorrow, there'll be 2 more guys coming right from the recruiting process of what we've done. There's nothing that, to me, it's more important to get, in-house and as soon as possible as what we're going to do in the strength program and what we're going to do in the recruiting program. Because to me, those are 2 of the lifebloods to how we've built things and how I believe the future needs to continue to grow.
Hey, Coach. Sam Harrigan with the Badger Herald. As you mentioned, you'll be in kind of a unique role for these next couple of weeks through both practices. But if there's one thing that you're trying to preach and establish in these next couple of weeks, what would that be? It's
trust, respect, and love. I mean, I know that if I'm visiting with these guys just the last few hours, that's what that locker room was built on, and now you've got a new guy that's walking in that's completely different, and they don't know me. And so there's things that have to be done to build those bonds, and they aren't done overnight. They're done with authenticity. They're done with, repeated actions over time. And if I'm not around and I'm not having an opportunity to be around them while they're practicing in bowl practice, in those situations, I'm losing an opportunity to really help develop that relationship. Because how much we can push these guys and how much we can get them to grow has a direct correlation to how good of a relationship we've got with them.
Jake, and then we'll go in the back.
Jake Kokorowski, Wisconsin State Journal. Luke, with going back to recruiting, and I'm looking at your previous classes at Cincinnati, a lot of Ohio blood in those classes. Are there particular regions or states that you are hoping to dive into now at Wisconsin? And then within that as well, just how, with the recruiting overall, how is it going to change going from maybe a program like Cincinnati and then what you'll be facing here at Wisconsin?
Well, they've had a great foundation. I'm not saying that what they've done or how they've recruited. They've had a great foundation. I think for me, the uniqueness of being here is just like we were at the University of Cincinnati. The 300-mile radius, you can do the core and the crux of your program, and that's what I love about this opportunity. Is within the 300-mile radius, that will be the core to what it is that we do. I have a good grasp on that. I don't, like I said, I've got to learn a lot more about, maybe the 50-mile, the 60-mile, the 100-mile radius. But I know as you get into the Chicago and the areas that you guys have done an unbelievable job in, there's a lot of routes that have been built there. And I know that if we can kind of capture that like we did of that 300-mile radius where the core of the program is, then we can extend into the other areas where, we'll look at the history of what's been really good here. And, those pipelines and those kinds of things, people don't realize how strong that is. When you've got a guy from an area, or you've got a few guys from an area, there's a connection that goes a long way. We'll use a lot of the connections, obviously, that we've had. I'm not saying that, Ohio is the next place where we're going to go. No, but there's a lot of great connections. There's a lot of former great players that have been from Ohio as well. And, that's why we'll have a variety of guys that have backgrounds from different areas. But that's my job, is to figure out what's been real successful here. And I'm still in that process. But I know that the 300-mile radius is an opportunity to make this program and this team a championship team.
Luke, right here. Mike Hogan from Battery 24/7. What's your view on the transfer portal, and how would you describe the way you guys used it at Cincinnati?
So we did not want to be a transfer team. I do not want to be a transfer team. I'm a high school recruiting guy that says it's about development of young men. We signed 22, 23, 24 guys in the last 3 years at Cincinnati. Now, sometimes people will say, oh, you had this transfer. Yeah, we have had a matrix for transfers. We have had literally a matrix to say they've got to hit these points in these situations and these things, because the last thing I want to do is bring a guy in to our program here in particular that's going to mess with the culture, it's going to mess with the environment, it's going to mess with the relationships and inside a lot of those rooms. I don't know what those are just yet. So in my mind, more than anything, it's got to be a right fit, and it's got to be the right people. And the thing about transfers is sometimes you don't know them, and you don't have the opportunity like you've had in high school to get to know them, to be in their home, to build some relationships, and know when they walk in the door they've got 4 or 5 years to grow and to develop into what it is that you want. So I've never been a proponent of the transfer portal, but I think we have used it and would use it only in ways to fill gaps.
All the way on the left.
Evan Flood, 24/7 Sports. Coach, as someone that was once in a very similar situation to that of Jim Leonard, I'm curious, not to give away trade secrets or anything, but what would be your advice to him as somebody who was interim coach at his alma mater, and what worked for you after ultimately getting passed on to you becoming the coach you are today?
I think a lot of soul searching. When I left Jim the other night, I just said, hey, I think you got a lot of things to think about. You got to really kind of, in your mind, figure out where you want to be in 5 years and where you want to be in 10 years. And if you can figure out and say where you want to be in 5 years and where you want to be in 10 years, it's going to help you a lot better to figure out where you want to be next year. And that's not easy. There's a lot of things that we all have to be able to get over and get through. We didn't dive into it as much. If he does pick my brain on some of those things, obviously I would get deeper. But I know that it's not an easy situation. And it takes a special person in some ways to get over a lot of those things. I had a hard time with it. And, but I do believe it was the right thing for me in the way that I did it and went about it, and it helped me be who I am. But my way is not always the right way. It's not the way for everybody else. But I think that's where it really comes down to what's in your heart, what's in your mind, and he'll know what's best for him. He'll know what's best for this program and his team, and I'm excited to just find out what he thinks.
Let's go, Jim.
Chris, a two-parter for you. There's a report out there that the contract is 7 years, $7.9 million. Is that accurate?
The contract is 7 years. It begins at $7.5 million. It averages $7.8 million over 7 years.
Okay. My next question is a little offshoot of that is whoever you were going to hire, you were going to have to convince that that this athletic department is all in, right? Or willing to do whatever it takes to go for championships. Did you need to sell him on that? And are you willing to, give him whatever he needs in terms of assistant pool, recruiting, whatever he needs, whatever he asks for to get to that level that he wants to get to?
Yeah, I think, certainly it required a commitment on my part on behalf of the department. And, from my perspective, just a recognition that this program is important. It's a priority to us. It's the program, we've talked about this, and it became, so evident during COVID. This program is the lifeblood. It's the financial engine that underwrites the cost of opportunity for 800 kids. And it needs to be operating at a championship level. And so I think, the most comforting aspect of the conversations that I had with Luke is about partnership and determining where are the areas in which we need to bring up to speed, improve on both operationally within our football program. Recruiting is one area there, but also in terms of capital projects. It's no secret that we're pursuing, a new indoor practice facility that will be a huge asset to us, to NIL opportunities, and embracing a changing world, and my support of the Varsity Collective. That's 3 areas of countless areas in which we'll partner and work together and make sure that everything we do is living up to the expectation of winning championships in this program.
Colton?
Luke, Colton Bartholomew, Wisconsin State Journal. Football question for you here. You've had a ton of success, obviously, with the 3-3-5 defense, and Wisconsin's done really well with the 3-4. I know you've got to evaluate the players and what you have when you get to next season, but do you envision a 3-3-5 here, or kind of where do you want to go with that?
I haven't envisioned a whole lot of those things just yet. If you really study us for what we have done, we've adapted and adjusted to whatever we need to do. And I think that's what I've learned as much as anything over my time is the ability to adapt and adjust, not just to your guys, but also to what you need to do to be successful. And at least I've had the good fortunes of being in the Big Ten for a long time, so I do have an idea of the things that you need to be able to do. So we'll evaluate, we'll assess, and we'll definitely be a group that can go multiple in different ways. But what they have done has been done a phenomenal job, and we would be out of our minds to think that you come in and just completely scrap and change something, just like a culture, just like an environment. I mean, they've done an unbelievable job at what's been created here, and what our job is to do is to come in here, adapt, adjust, enhance what it is that we've got, and we'll do that.
On the left.
Chris, Doug Russell with WIBA Radio. When you consider hiring from within versus hiring someone who doesn't have as much familiarity with the program, what's your thought process when you evaluated all of your candidates?
I haven't done that just yet. That's what we'll this is
for Chris.
Oh, good. That's easy then.
If you'd like to take it.
No, go ahead. Shoot.
Hiring from within, hiring external, the starting point for me was making the decision that's best for this program. And that's the start and end to it. I think, the toughest thing for me throughout this entire process was decisions that affect people who I love and care about and I respect. And, clearly Jimmy is squarely in that category, but our entire staff, I have teammates on this staff, and it's not lost upon me the impact that has on those families. Perhaps the most difficult part of this process has been the hardship that it has created for the kids that I care about and love so much, that I've tried to support in my time here. And as I think about, what my experience was as a football player here, as a student athlete here in this program. You know, the experience that these kids on this team had this year isn't one that I would wish on anyone. It's been extremely difficult, and that's why, you know, I said earlier how proud I am of the approach they took. And you know, when we met with them last night, I recognized and I apologized for the decisions that I have made this season, that have contributed to the challenges of this season. And that just can't be overlooked. And it's been the hardest part for me, and it's clearly been hard on these players, on these student athletes. But, you know, those factors clearly play a role in or are applied to internal choice. I felt it was my responsibility to find the best leader for this program in the long term. And so, you know, usually, and in this case, an internal choice understands the culture, understands what the DNA of this place is, and that's usually a head start. That's usually a big asset. And I think what's so rare about, once I got to know Luke, what's so rare about the opportunity that led us together is someone who believes in the same things, someone who believes in what this experience should be for a team and for the development of young men. And as I mentioned upstairs, a commitment to education and a transformational experience for these young men. That's what it was for me here. That's what it was for Luke. That's what this experience can provide, and that's really what my priority was.
Time for just a couple more. Mark, go ahead.
I'm glad that you said that. That was a transformation for me, too. O-linemen usually think they're smarter than D-linemen, you know. So sometimes they don't think us D-linemen actually want to get an education, too. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Chris.
Luke, Mark Stewart from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel again. One of the things you hear from coaches here often is, you know, from a recruiting standpoint, is the challenge of, you know, having student athletes, you know, with the academic credentials to get into this school. As someone who's recruited at Ohio State, and from what you know of what you've been told, what it's going to take to, you know, have athletes come here, can you shed some light on any similarities, differences that you know that you can tell?
No, I think the unique thing is we all want to put guys in situations and positions that they can be successful. It does us no good to bring a guy into this program, whether he's a great player or not, that can't be successful with the things and the parameters which they got to live by. We know there's an incredible an academic institution, and we've got to make sure that we bring guys in that can fit that standard. You know, it doesn't mean you have to shy away. Well, okay, we got to take a guy that's not quite as big, not quite as fast because of an academic standard. No, but we all got to put them in positions where they can thrive and be successful. I'm excited to meet the people that are going to work with them, because we know that there are guys that you have to take that have challenges, and as long as you have the support to help them, they've got the heart and the drive to do it, all things can be done. And so I think that all goes into your assessment of what it is that you believe of a kid, you know. You can't just look at a couple game clips and say this is the kind of player he is. You can't just look at a transcript and say, oh, okay, well, he's a 2 whatever student, so he's not very good, or he's a 3.8 student, so he's really good. No, you got to dive in to know these guys a lot better. You got to know what's within and how they're going to work to make sure you're putting a guy in a situation that he can not only fit your culture, but be willing to do the things that you expect him to do.
All the way back on the left.
Luke, Zach Hanley from Channel 3 in Madison. Just curious, as a player at Ohio State and then as an assistant coach at Ohio State, how did that experience shape you as a leader and help shape your coaching style and what you want to see on the field?
Well, I don't know that it was where I was. I think the great fortunes that I had is I was able to keep my family at one place for 16 years and be with 3 Hall of Fame coaches. So I had the good fortunes to play for and then be a GA for John Cooper. And then I had a great fortune to coach for Jim Tressel for 10 years, 9-10 years, and then with Urban Meyer for 5. Obviously, it was unique that I was at my alma mater, but I got incredible experiences in 3 different leadership styles and never had to move my family. So I look at myself and say I had incredible fortune, not just to win games and to see how it's done, but to do it and be able to see how 3 Hall of Fame coaches have done it and done it in different ways. I treasure those experiences. I'm none of the 3. I think that's what I'm very fortunate to be able to see, is that no matter what, you take a piece from every single one of those guys, but you got to be authentic and you got to be who you are. And I don't know if I would understand that had I only been with one, had I only been with two, had I not seen it done and be successful. So like I said, when I stood up there today, I didn't thank those guys. There was a lot of people that I couldn't thank, but if I was here today right now to say, okay, what's helped you get to where you are, is to have the ability to be around John Cooper, to be around Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, and I'd throw Lee Owens in 2 years at the University of Akron. That's what has helped shape me into the coach and leader I am today.
Last two questions, Zach and then Jim.
Zach Heilprin, Zone Madison. Chris, and it's actually a question for both you guys, kind of a timeline question. Chris, when did you know Luke was the guy? And Luke, when did you know Wisconsin was where you wanted to be?
Yeah, we spent the process getting to know each other. It wasn't until, and I know there's a tremendous amount of interest in the step-by-step of the process and what thresholds we crossed in terms of getting to know each other and the like. But I would tell you that it was last week in which I had a chance to fully evaluate the candidates that were in consideration, including Jimmy. And we sat down with Jimmy Monday afternoon for a few hours and got a sense for what his vision was for this program. And it was after that I was forced with, making a really tough but important decision. And it was at that time that I realized Luke was the guy.
It was hard for me. I mean, I knew that there was interest. I'm not a great guy to build relationships with when you're in the midst of, the battle. And so I tried to stay really, really focused and tried not to think about it. And, my wife and I would take those opportunities, maybe an hour here or there. But I couldn't tell you that I really, truly knew exactly what I wanted to do until I could almost finish up what I was doing. And there's not, like, everybody's like, well, what was the straw and the thing? But it's just a process. And, as I started to even think about it in little snippets, it started to feel better and better and better about what this place is and what it can be. But there's not, I don't know that I could tell you, hey, this was the day I woke up after our last game and I said, this is what we're going to do. But it was that process. It was those little moments. And it probably wasn't truly till the very end that I was like looking at my wife and say, we got to do this. And, so I don't know what the exact time.
Final question.
Chris, as you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of current players that are hurt and unsure of their future, and the transfer portal is what it is. Do you have any concern that you'll be able to field a competitive team for the bowl game?
No, I mean, we're excited about the bowl game, and there's a rich tradition of bowl games here, and we've got a 21-year streak in playing in bowl games here. And there's a process that our players will go through to become more comfortable with the direction that Coach Fickell will take this program. And that began last night. That started last night when we addressed them, and then when Coach Fickell was left with the players to talk to them. And I'm confident that we'll have a team who's fired up about the direction of our program. I don't have those kind of concerns. And this will be a valuable experience for all involved, for our players, for our coaches. For a long time, we viewed playing in bowl games as a competitive advantage, as an opportunity to further develop our roster and the younger players, and that's how it'll be viewed this year, as an incredible opportunity. And I think we'll have plenty of people to take advantage of it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Sorry we didn't get to every question, but hopefully you'll have many more opportunities to get to know Coach Fickell down the road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.